What was the worst punishment that your parents ever gave you, and what did you do to deserve it? My dad was smart. All his punishments were things he would have to do eventually. One time I went to a party at my friend's house without telling my parents. I was woken up at 6 AM to a breakfast I couldn't eat because I was hungover. Then I was sent outside to pick up sticks. My parents' backyard is surrounded with trees. There is a never-ending supply of sticks you can pick up, not just big ones. Any tiny twig in the grass was to be picked up. Walking around bending over to grab sticks for hours while hungover was a good enough punishment to keep me from sneaking to parties. Oh, the horror. My parents live in the middle of a forest in Michigan and they would make me do the exact same thing. I don't know how many countless hours or sticks I picked up. The upside was some huge bonfires. I went on a school trip to the local amusement park when I was 14 or 15 years old. The trip was at the end of the school year. Buses picked you up at the school in the morning and dropped you off at the park, and then picked you up at the park later that night and dropped you back at the school for your parents to take you home. So that night, my parents show up at the school to take me home, but I don't get off the bus. They ask everyone they see, but nobody knows what happened to me. This is before cell phones. So they go home to check the voicemail. No messages. They wait, but still no call. They call my friends' houses, but I'm not there. They call the hospitals. They call the police. I am nowhere to be found. Except I was somewhere, of course. I was still at the park, riding the rides. The bus had been scheduled to leave the park 2 hours before closing. A friend's mom had gone on the trip in her own vehicle and offered to give me a ride home if I wanted to stay until the park closed. Heck yes, I want to stay until the park closes. It never occurred to me to call home and tell my parents that I wouldn't be on the bus. I just assumed they'd figure it out. I wasn't a very good son. So anyway, friend's mom drops me off at home 2 hours after I've been missing. My mom sees us in the driveway and comes out screaming, not at me, but at the friend's mom for not making me call them. After the friend's mom left, that's when I got yelled at. And I deserved it, no question about it. Up to this point in the story, I'm entirely in the wrong. I had a part-time job working at a summer camp, so the next day my mom drives me to work, but rather than drop me off, she goes into work with me and tells my boss about what happened last night, still screaming, and how I shouldn't be trusted to take care of children because of what a terrible son I am and I should be fired immediately. She's doing this in front of everyone, my boss, my co-workers, the kids, some of the kids' parents, and I'm in tears from the embarrassment. So that's great. Boss takes me into his office privately, says my dad had warned him that my mom has bipolar disorder and might do something like this, and not to worry about it. I've been a great employee and whatever happens at home has nothing to do with my performance at work, and if I ever need to talk his door is wide open. That was the day I learned that my mother had bipolar disorder. Your boss is amazing. I don't think is the worst thing that happened, but when I was younger I did Cumin, which basically Satan's education system. They hand out these packets where you do math problems over and over again. There would be like 24 questions a packet and my parents decided I would be their victim in this atrocious act of parenting. 2 older sisters, so I ended up with 32 packets a week. It just wasn't possible. 768 math problems, not including schoolwork. They began a rule where for every math problem that I did not do and got wrong I get 1 spank with a metal coat hanger. My butt did not fare well. I had an undiagnosed kidney issue as a kid where my kidneys didn't drain fully. This resulted in me wetting my bed almost every night despite not drinking anything before bed and using the toilet before bed. My stepmom got fed up with this and made me lay in my own pee for hours on end. I also had to wear the dirty underwear sometimes, too. Probably not the worst, but the most memorable. One time I left school in the middle of class, just walked off into the woods. The school called the police and searched for me. I was angry because a bully of mine threw my backpack out the window and the teacher told me to go get it. So when they found me, I was completely unapologetic. Called the teacher a B, got on the local news, radio, very small town. So, my mom is telling dad about all this stuff that I did, only, she gets me and my brother mixed up all the time. So she is like, and Dargus brother did this and Dargus brother did that, and my dad is all pee as crap, grabs Dargus brother, and spanks the crap out of him. while I watch, with a smile on my face. Then my mom is all, number, no that's, number, that was Dargus 007, beating of my life. This is great. When I was in high school I would call my dad on the bus on my way home from school to see if my beast of a stepmom was home, what kind of mood she was in, if I should take any special precautions with my behavior, etc. One day I did just this, and my dad told me that my stepmom had stayed home from work because she felt sick. His advice was to go quietly to my room so as not to disturb her and, for bonus points, clean my room. And I listened to him. Right around the time I had finished making my bed, my stepmom burst into my room screaming at me, slapping me, and throwing me into walls and dressers for not greeting her appropriately when I got home. Then she took my cell phone and all of the other phones in the house and called my dad, telling him that I had called her a fat bee. Well, I wouldn't have been wrong if I had, and that's why I was all bruised up, while the being thrown into walls and being slapped sucked. The worst punishment was that she tore the shirt I had been wearing. It was a Chicago Cubs shirt my dad had bought me at our very last outing that was just the two of us. My mom took my books away for a month. Worse than any spanking. What did I do? I was reading Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series. At some point some queen tries to seduce the hero, and the hero turns her down. My super conservative mom found that passage too much fricking. No reading for me for a month. You would think 1, our hero turning down fricking is a good example of chastity, and 2, you would be glad your teenager is reading anything. But no, sinful thoughts and all. I read this as A Wrinkle in Time and was confused. That was a dope series too. I had to eat nutty candies. I was allergic. No need to freak out too much. They didn't know initially. Yes, they noticed the symptoms, but they didn't put 2 and 2 together. Initially they gave me nutty candies because I actively hated them. Only later did they know that I had an allergy, and thankfully, they stopped. When I was around 5/6 we were staying at my grandfather's place. I was in the living room with my older brother and I farted. He went and complained to my father, who asked if I had done it. I lied and said no. My father grabbed me by the hair and dragged me into the laundry, a tiny room with no windows and all these old-fashioned gardening tools that scared me as a kid. I hated that laundry. While in there he got a thick wooden stick and beat me with it until I couldn't stand. Then he locked me in there, begging to come out. Every time I spoke he'd come back and beat me again. After a while I just sat and cried. Periodically he'd come in to yell at and hit me again. It went on for a few hours until my mum came and let me out. I was in so much pain I could barely walk the few meters to my bed, where I had to lie on my stomach because of the pain. That you deserved, not scary crap like this. When I was a kid all I wanted for Christmas was the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier, the big one. That year my parents bought me a butt ton of Joe stuff, probably close to $500, early 1980s, which was a small fortune in G.I. Joes, probably close to every available toy, and I, being a spoiled brat, threw a tantrum that I didn't get the carrier. Then, oh man, my dad pulls A Christmas Story and brings out this big box from the other room. I dove on it cackling with glee. I knew it was my carrier. Paper went flying. I tore into it like a raving lunatic. It was my aircraft carrier. My heart was pounding with excitement. I was laying on the top of the box so happy. Then my dad taught me a lesson in thankfulness. He took it away, snatched it right out from under me, and told me that he was going to return it to the store because I was an ungrateful little s. A few days later we drove to the store and he made me return it. He then took the money and bought some golfing equipment for himself. I think I got a cheeseburger out of the deal. It was horrible. I hated him for weeks. But I never complained about a gift again, mostly out of fear. However, looking back on it as an adult who has raised his own kids, my father was a genius. That was one of the best lessons I was ever taught. A little follow-up. I got quite a few letters in my inbox informing me of what a terrible parent my father was. And while that may have been true for other reasons not listed here, this was something he did right. This thread is filled with horrid stories of abuse and worse, and none of that should have ever happened. That said, there is a fundamental flaw in today's parenting culture that pushes parents to be liked as one would like a friend by their children, rather than teach them proper values in life. You're not there to be liked. It should be a natural byproduct of good parenting. But if it isn't, then so be it. You are there to teach that child how to be a functional and responsible adult, no matter the personal cost. Good parents typically can manage both. You will survive your child's ire in the effort to teach them to do right, and later they will thank you for it. My father risked me disliking him for a while to teach me to be thankful for what I was given. It is a lesson I have never forgotten, and that I am extremely grateful to have learned. I was 6, my sister 11, and we were on a long car ride to some big summer family barbecue out of state. My sister was pinching me, playing I'm not touching you BS, and kicking my legs the entire ride. About an hour in I lost it, just cried and cried and cried. Well, mom and dad had also had enough. If you don't stop crying, we're leaving you on the side of the road. Now this put me over the edge. First my sister won't leave me alone, and now my parents want to leave me completely. So, yeah, I cried like a little bee. Needless to say, they sat me on the gravel lining the lonely road and drove off just past where I could see them. Obviously they came back. I shut up. My sister is a bee. I hate it when parents blame you for reacting to what your siblings did. I wouldn't say you deserved that. In middle school, if you had below a 70% on a test, your parents had to sign the paper and then return it to the teacher. Well, as you can guess, I got below a 70%. I waited until the next morning right before school to have my dad sign the paper. He got pee and open palm punched in the face, giving me a nosebleed. Had to go to school with blood on my shirt. There are a lot of punishments I received that now looking back were signs of physical abuse. Just to name a few. Punched so hard I fell into a door and a chipped tooth. Bruises. Choked until on the verge of passing out, and many more. Took away my computer. As a kid who almost never talked with anyone except for online, it was terrible. My mother took my keyboard way back when. I got real good at sending IMs using Charm app with copy and paste. I had a playroom when I was younger. It was basically just a spare room that my parents had no idea what to do with, so they basically gave it to me for me to use. I had all my games and toys in there, and a TV. One day, one of my cousins was over and we were talking about the TV, and he said some bull crap about pouring water into a TV and it being fine. Then he dared me to pour a little bit of water into my TV. I took the bait and did, and broke the TV. My parents were so furious that I was banned from my playroom for either a week or month. Can't remember. I wasn't allowed to play with anything in my playroom for that month. My cousin was a real bro that day, despite tricking me into it. He felt bad, so while everyone was asleep, he moved my Lego bucket out of my playroom and sneaked it into my room and hid it on the other side of my bed while I was asleep. That was some real ninja crap. My parents tried to overrule it and say no, you can't play with your Lego, but we rule lawyered the crap out of them and claimed that they said I couldn't play with anything that was currently in my playroom. My Lego weren't in my playroom, thus I was free to play with them. We put up such a fuss that they gave up. Ha. So many parents don't play by the rule lawyer laws. I know I might be an actual lawyer by now if mine did. They just succeeded in teaching me that I can't fight City Hall. Probably something with schoolwork. I was terrible at doing my homework. My dad made me collect everything in my room and put them in trash bags. I had to take all of the trash bags to the garage. So I had roughly 20 trash bags of my stuff. Took about 3 hours to collect it all. Then, once a week, I got one trash bag of stuff back. If I got my grade to move up, then I could collect more. Obviously he kept the good stuff last. PlayStation, cable box, computer were all given back if I did exceptionally well. After about 7 weeks I was able to get all my stuff back, but only after basically moving my whole room and living in a barren room for a couple of weeks. When I was in grade school I came back home with a low 70. From then on, my mom made me study every weeknight from 6 PM to 9 PM, regardless of if I had homework or not. This lasted until the end of high school. In hindsight it was not a bad punishment. I excelled in academics. I threw a pop bottle out the car window. My dad slammed the brakes and told me to get out of the car, pick it up and walk home. He then just took off. Mind you, we were already in our very safe neighborhood, and I was 14. But man, did I feel like crap. To this day, I have never littered and I go off on people who do. It was my birthday, so my mom and her boyfriend at the time took me and my friends to go paintballing at an indoor arena. My mom's boyfriend was playing referee since we knew the owners. He got a paintball in the back of the head, assumed it was me that shot him on purpose and pulled me out of the game and wouldn't let me back in for the rest of the games. I got to sit by myself while the rest of my family and friends enjoyed the crap out of it. Great friends, great family. Goes to play paintball. Mad when shot with paintball. Your mother's boyfriend sounds like a retard. My dad tackled me onto the bed and started to strangle me. From the little I remember, I was refusing to stop working on a project and clean. This caused a yelling argument between me and my mother. My dad then barges in and does that. Good times. Another one. My dad punched a hole through the bathroom door whilst I was in the shower one day because my mom's phone was in my pants pocket, and I told her I would give it to her when I'm done showering. And last one. Got my keys for my car taken from me due to the fact I refused to pick up my dad from the casinos where he got lost and drunk. I would have had to find him even though I would not even be allowed. My dad's brother was with him, but left my dad there and came back. Some reason I got yelled at about how crappy of a son I am for refusing to pick up my drunk dad. Since I didn't have my car, I almost lost my job. Go to love parents. Child abuse. The frick is wrong with some people? They're your children. You're supposed to protect them, you dumb buttholes. I came in here to make light of my parents sending me to summer school. Left depressed. My brother and I were grounded for life after we knocked over a hand-painted antique hurricane globe light. That was 40 years ago, and we are still locked in our room. Could someone please send help? I'm not exactly sure what he did, but my best friend's dad made him write a 3-page paper on the Irish potato famine as a punishment. I think it was because he was already grounded and did something else stupid. This was also on the early days of the internet, so information was hard to find. This isn't the worst punishment I received by far, but it is the worst punishment in behavior to punishment ratio. My mother was as an alcoholic, drug addicted, bipolar mess. She's got a list of petty shoplifting and drunk disorderly arrests about a mile long. She's been sectioned over half a dozen times, and I was actually removed from her care around age 10 and lived with my grandparents until I was 16. When I was 17 I lived with my mother again because homelessness was the other option basically. One day I took a bottle of vodka to a party. It was a liter bottle, but it was only half full because it was the survivor of a previous party. Well, imagine my surprise when I added to some Fanta and it tastes weaker than regular Fanta. Confused, I take a swig from the bottle and yeah, water. Fantastic. So I get replacement booze and party hard, etc. Next day I confront my mother, who just lies and lies and lies to my face. I accuse her of entering my locked room, stealing from me and the whole 9 yards. I get the bottle of vodka water and show it to her. She takes it and I sit there smugly like I'm the amateur detective just found the crucial piece of evidence that puts her away for life. So I return to consciousness a moment later, very aware that I'm bleeding and wet, and there's glass everywhere. My mother had just smashed the bottle over my skull and yet she was stood there with a triumphant look, like her assault proved she was innocent of my accusation. I called an ambulance. The police turned up too. They arrested her despite my protests, because she was hurling abuse at them. I got stitches. I didn't press charges. I come home and my key doesn't fit in the lock. Her butthole boyfriend opens the door and suggests I find somewhere else to live. Luckily I have some pretty cool friends. Just remembered, when I went back for my stuff after finding a new place, she had been burgled in the interim and all of my stuff had been taken. So I lost a lot of tech, memorabilia and sentimental stuff. I'm pretty sure she pawn sold it. I miss the Xbox 360 and PS3 a little, and losing the game progress was harsh. But I miss this stupid necklace she got me when I was a kid the most. Even though I don't wear it because I draped it around this cool dragon statue that she said was my dad's, and I've only met my dad like 3 times, because he is a different breed of scumbag. I am so sorry you had to experience this. I know what it's like to have a mother constantly lie to your face and prove her innocence, and to be involved with not such good history. But sometimes people just don't know how to change. Hope you're safe and doing okay. I got in trouble a lot when I was a kid. More often than not I was grounded from TV, or going outside, or they would take away my favorite toys. The worst was when they figured out I was completely okay with being grounded because it gave me time to read, so they took away my books for a couple weeks when I was 8 or so. But I still read, dang it. I used to sneak downstairs after everyone went to bed and grab a book off the bookcase in the living room. I finished Tommy Knockers, The Stand, IT and Gerard's Game before my parents caught on. Same with my parents. They realized that go to your room just meant I could read in peace. They also would make me write lines, but after about 1,000 of them they realized that I enjoyed writing and improving my penmanship. To this day, everyone compliments me on my handwriting, or says I write like a girl. I'm 30, 6 feet tall, and bearded. I was a senior in high school and my license got taken away for a few weeks because I drove home blackout drunk from one of our girls' volleyball games. I'd say I deserved that one. I used to fight with my older sister all the time. Whenever it got out of control, my mom would lock us in the bathroom together until we got over whatever we were arguing about. Which apparently was a poorly thought out punishment, as Yumoki Moki is now a subscriber to our Wincest. I talked back to my mom and my dad slapped me. Not hard, just enough to get his point across. He had never slapped me before. I peed a little. I once was so mad at my mom when she shoved me. Can't even remember why. I stood up straighter and took a step towards her. I had no plans to hit her, but I was just so angry I wasn't thinking. Holy crap. Dad freaking knocked me on my butt. I thought I had broken a couple ribs. Never did that again. In 7th grade I finished a class with an 80%. So on the drive home from the last day of school my mom dropped me off on the side of the road and said, "This is 80% of the drive home. Walk the last 20%. At 16 I came home pee drunk one night at like 4 AM. Stumbled around the kitchen for a while finding food and my dad wakes up, makes a glass of water, says hello, and goes back to bed. I'm thinking that I got away with it and he was too sleepy to notice how far gone I was. Nope. He woke me up at 10 AM and made me mow the lawn in the middle of a Georgia August. By the time I was done it was well over 90 degrees and I had vomited off the side of the mower a dozen times. I also had a headache from the noise and dehydration that I hoped would just kill me. The whole time my dad watched from the deck under an umbrella with a beer in hand. I remember when I was done I walked up the steps and he grinned and offered me a beer. Sick bastard. My dad made me strip all of the wallpaper off my bedroom wall with a damp rag and a scraper because I accidentally watched one of his freaky Asian PVHS tapes. My parents, some friends, and I had gone out to dinner at Pizza Hut to celebrate my birthday. We sat at a different table because the booths weren't large enough and we were all fine with that. We'd gotten some really crappy service that night. The place was empty besides us but the pizza still arrived cold and drinks we'd ordered first still came even later. So we started joking about a negative tip. A dare was thrown down. I accepted. On the way out I stole $2 out of the tip plate. They didn't see. Still my dad found out by overhearing. He whooped my butt good when I got home. Smacked around so hard the entire side of my face was bruised for a couple months. I mean it had mostly gone by the first month and I sort of hid it by letting my teen butt grew out. Whenever my sisters and I would treat our belongings poorly, my dad would get us in the car and drive us through the poorer areas of Newark, NJ. He was usually dead silent but the message was clear. Respect what you have. Be freaking grateful because there are a lot of people very nearby who have nothing. Maybe not the worst punishment but definitely the most effective. And we deserved it. We were spoiled freaking brats. The police took me to their office and I had to sleep there through the night cause I damaged stuff that was on private property. My mother neither angry nor sad, she just sat there with big disappointment in her eyes. My punishment from the police was to collect trash from a park. My mother's punishment was silent. She looked at me with this disappointment and when I tried to talk to her she gave me short answers. Thanks Santa Claus. She eventually came back to her old behavior. But that was the worst punishment I've ever received. My father made me touch a burning hot piece of metal with my bare hands. It's definitely a strong deterrent and I've had a healthy fear of hot metal and him and being punished. Since then, I wasn't listening to him while using power tools and he told me I could hurt myself. So, to make it clear, He made me hurt myself to show how painful it would be if I continued to be stupid around tools that could hurt me. I've also similarly learned you never walk away from fire, including kitchen appliances which could start fires, like the stove and the oven. It kinda worked, I guess. I was a nervous, jumpy kid who was scared of lots of things, including my father for years. When I was about 12 or so, I had my eyes set on this amazing RC monster truck. This thing was huge. It must have sat about a foot tall and 3 long. I was freaking around with my friends, and we found this abandoned house around the corner. We jumped the gate and found the back door to the porch unlocked. We go inside and go in the shed. We found a .22 rifle, some lawn shears, some other rusted out crap. We play around with it. Was no bullets and it was a little rusty. We threw things around and generally were just little shoots trashing it for fun. We left thinking nothing of it. A few days later the police knock on the door and ask if anyone had messed with this house. Apparently the man was just on vacation and kept his house as kind of a seasonal home. We didn't think so because the house was completely empty, but he comes back and his crap is wrecked. We had this 2x4 that we used to lock the sliding glass door. It didn't lock, so the only way to lock it was using this board inside the tracks so it couldn't open. My punishment was being bent over the couch and my mother wailing on my butt with this 2x4 until she was satisfied. I was lucky I didn't get arrested, but the police understood I was a little kid. The worst part was I didn't get my monster truck. I begged and pleaded but never got it. My parents tried to get me to delete my Diablo 2 account once as a punishment, but I absolutely refused to type in my password. That didn't go over well. I was grounded, including all video games, and I had left one of the controllers on the wrong side of the drawer they had put it in. You can try but you'll never get the password out of me. Flukes at 27 replied to his parents smugly. That thing's 12 characters. You could never figure it out, so just accept that this punishment is unimpossible and move on. Parents glance at post-its around the computer. Frick. Probably wasn't the worst punishment but came at the worst time. So I was in high school and I had been talking to this girl for a while. Well, one day I get a text from her saying, "Hey, you want to come over?" Well, the day before I got a ticket for speeding, grounding me, and my parents decided to punish me by taking my car away. I got so sad when I had to reply, "Can't, I'm grounded." If I was still in high school I would have sailed there using the masts in my pants and my sails blinding me from seeing any logic. My father and I both have violent tempers. One day we were in the van going to a store or something, I forgot. My mother was in the front seat, my dad was driving, and I was in the back with my sister. An argument ensued between my father and I. When he gets angry he likes to get in my face like a drill sergeant. He turned around in the seat and pointed at my face while yelling about whatever we were arguing about. We were stopped at a red light. My temper got the better of me and I punched him in the face. He proceeded to park the van, get out, open my door, drag me out, and whoop my sorry edgy teenage butt. He then pushed me back in the seat, told me to buckle up, and continued to drive to his destination. For added background, during the argument I was about 15 years old, and I was being a disrespectful little crap thinking my dad wasn't going to do anything because he was driving. Boy was I wrong. TL. Doctor, just read it, you lazy bastard. Your TLDR excuses your violent temper, haha. I would have to stand in the corner for hours on end, with my back straight and my hands behind my back. If I was caught moving at all I would get screamed at and corrected to stand straight again. This was not my parents who did this, though they used a similar method. They would stick me in the corner for hitting but were much less strict. For them it was time out. If I wasn't standing straight they didn't care. Everything was taken out of my room. Don't remember why, but yeah. When I was in 5th grade, age 10-11, I told my mom that I didn't have any homework. So she went off to her belly dance class and I did my homework the second she left. Granted, it was only about 10 really easy math problems, but I wanted to prove that I didn't need to be told to do my homework. When she came back, I showed her how I had done my homework. She grounded me for a month for lying to her. Additionally, she disallowed me from watching TV on weekdays unless it was with her or my dad. I'm still grounded from TV as a junior in high school. 17. This wasn't really my fault, but I went on a cruise that stopped at Mexico. I had no desire to go to Mexico as I was 15 and wanted to go on the ship's computer and talk to my boyfriend. Well, my uncle somehow left the ship under my name. I don't know how this happened, but signed back in using his name. We have different last names, so they didn't make the connection and thought I was still in Mexico. They had record of me leaving and not coming back. They aren't allowed to delay the cruise for a missing person, so they told my mom they had to leave within 2 hours. She was panicking and went back to her room to pack her bag and go find me in Mexico. She wasn't going to leave me behind, thank God for that. Luckily, right as she was preparing to get off, I walked up to the group and was like, "Hey guys, when's dinner?" Everyone screamed at me and my cousins were crying, and then I cried because I didn't know what was going on, and then they all just hugged me. The cruise line apologized profusely for the insane freak up, and I was basically on a leash for the rest of the cruise. I remember one instance in particular because of the occasional nightmares I have about it. For whatever reason, I, the youngest member of the family, was designated the responsibility to feed the dogs we owned. There were 5 separate enclosures for all of them. Once in the morning, either before school or the moment I wake up, and again when I returned from school or after lunch. There were strict punishments if I forgot on any occasion, or if I waited a little later, so I learned to do it religiously. With that being said, one day I get home from school and immediately feed the dogs as usual. My mother comes home from work a few hours later, walks into my room, and asks, "Did you feed the dogs today?" I wish I could convey the fear this statement gave me, as it usually meant a pretty severe beating was coming. I tell her I did and she clenched my hair in her fists and through gritted teeth growled, "Then why isn't there any food in the bowl?" Then she pulls me, still by my hair, out of my room and out to one of the dog pens. She yanks my head to make me look at the empty bowl and growls once again, "What is that?" I tell her I didn't know what happened, but I did, in fact, feed them after I got home. That's when she threw me to the ground and started kicking me violently. She focused most of the blows on my ribs, but there were a few to my head and stomach. She grabs me by my hair and forces me to my feet and tells me to feed them. She walks me to the dog food and back to the pens where the kicking process repeats itself. When she finally stops, she just walks into the house and leaves me on the ground. My ribs were bruised and it hurt to stand up on my own. I lay there in pain until it got dark and decided I had to make it into the house or risk staying the night outside. I guess I deserved it, in her opinion, because I lied and didn't feed our dogs. Both were false. When I was 3, I got a balloon. I don't remember where I got this balloon. It was some family outing. Anyway, I was very excited about this balloon. The time came to go home, so we all piled into the minivan, me in the car seat behind my dad, who was driving. Well, the balloon, being a balloon, kept bopping the back of my dad's seat and making balloon hitting the seat noises, as balloons hitting seats do. He got increasingly more infuriated that my 3-year-old self could not seem to comprehend how to control the balloon. So he yanked the balloon out of my tiny innocent hands and put it out the window, and it floated away, higher and higher and further into oblivion. It was soul crushing. When I was 10, I was grounded for 1 whole month of summer, in my room 100%, only allowed out for bathroom runs. The reason? As a rebellious type joke, I purchased a tiny pack of cigarette loads, which I dreamed of putting in my father's cigarettes. I would never really have put them in his cigarettes for fear of brutal punishment. I had been severely beaten with a leather belt for years as a young child, and I guess buying the cig loads was a mental release of imagining his cigs exploding, because he smoked like a chimney. I remember whenever I did something remotely considered bad, my parents would lock me in our backyard and make me weed trim, do yard work the entire day. At the ages of 8-14, that's pretty fricked up. They didn't let me in for water, etc., etc. Drunk out of hose and ate breakfast and dinner, no mid-meal. That sounds about like my punishment. Lem tell you, I straightened my butt real quick. One day in the hot sun was worse than being grounded for 2 weeks. I actually grew up to love the taste of hose water, so thanks mom. You have been visited by the romantic doggo. Comment love is magic so you never fall in the friend zone. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.